Hello, welcome to Secret Zone. Subscribe and turn on notifications for stories you won't forget. That night was supposed to be ordinary, forgettable. Just another exhausting pause between airports and meetings. I was standing under harsh white lights, listening to the low murmur of frustrated travelers when the announcement came through the speakers my flight had been canceled. At first, it felt like nothing more than an inconvenience, the kind you complain about and move on from. I remember checking the time, rubbing my eyes, and thinking only about sleep. I didn't know then that this single interruption was about to split my life into two clear halves. Everything I believed before and everything I would be forced to accept after. My name is Ethan Brooks, and for 4 years, I believed I was living a life built on trust, stability, and mutual respect. I believed my marriage to Samantha was solid, protected by love, honesty, and the quiet understanding that comes from sharing years together. Standing there in the airport, suitcase by my side, I had no idea that fate was on to delaying me. It was redirecting me. I decided to go home. I didn't call Samantha to tell her I was coming back early. Part of me thought it would be a nice surprise, a quiet moment at the end of a long day. Another part of me simply didn't think it mattered. Why would it? There was nothing to hide. Nothing to fear. When I finally arrived at our house late that night, the silence felt heavier than usual, but I brushed it off as coincidence. I moved carefully, almost instinctively, unaware that every step I took was carrying me closer to a truth I was never meant to discover. In those moments, I wasn't suspicious. I was tired, trusting, and completely unprepared. What I witnessed that night didn't arrive with shouting or dramatic confrontation. It arrived quietly, slipping into my awareness and settling there with a weight that refused to lift. That canceled flight didn't just bring me home early. It revealed a reality that would forever change how I understood love, loyalty, and myself. Before that night, Samantha and I lived what many people would call a perfect modern life. We both worked demanding jobs at well-known companies, understood the pressure of deadlines, and respected each other's ambition. Our days followed a rhythm that felt dependable: early mornings, long hours, shared dinners when schedules allowed, and plans for a future that seemed certain. I traveled often for work, and Samantha never questioned it. She supported me, and could ahead me, and reassured me in ways that made trust feel effortless. There were no loud arguments, no obvious warning signs, no cracks visible on the surface. I believed we were partners in every sense of the word, moving forward together with shared goals and shared faith in one another. That faith is what made the discovery so devastating. There was no dramatic explosion, no instant rage. Instead, there was a quiet collapse inside me. A slow realization that the life I thought I understood had been carefully divided into two versions: one I lived in, and another that existed without my knowledge. I chose silence, not because I was weak, but because clarity demanded it. I walked away that night carrying questions, restraint, and a determination to protect my dignity. This is not a story about revenge or confrontation. It is a story about restraint, about choosing composure over chaos, and about how a single, unexpected moment can expose a double life while also opening the door to something new. What followed that night would test my patience, my identity, and my understanding of trust, but it would also lead me, in time, toward healing, growth, and a future I never imagined. One that eventually included Olivia and a life rebuilt on honesty rather than illusion. Ethan Brooks had always believed that life rewarded consistency. If you worked hard, stayed honest, and treated people with respect, things would fall into place. For him, he had built a stable career at a large corporate firm, one that demanded long hours and frequent travel, but also offered security and pride. His marriage to Samantha felt like the natural extension of that success. They had been together for 4 years, living under the same roof, sharing responsibilities, and planning a future that felt solid and predictable. Samantha worked for a major brand as well, her career demanding but respectable, and Ethan admired her independence and ambition. From the outside, they were the image of a modern professional couple, busy, successful, and seemingly in sync. Their days followed a familiar rhythm. Mornings were rushed, but affectionate. Evenings calm when they aligned. Weekends spent catching up on rest or hosting friends when schedules allowed. There were no dramatic fights, no shouting matches, no obvious distance. Ethan trusted Samantha completely. He never checked her phone, never questioned her late evenings, never doubted her loyalty. Why would he? Trust, to him, wasn't something you guarded obsessively. It was something you gave fully when it had been earned. Business trips were part of Ethan's life, sometimes once a month, sometimes more. Samantha never complained. She hugged him goodbye, reminded him to eat properly, and texted him encouragement before big meetings. Each time he left, he felt reassured that what he was leaving behind was safe, steady, and waiting for him. Their home felt like an anchor, a place untouched by uncertainty. Looking back, Ethan would later realize that this sense of security was what made everything else so shocking. There had been small moments he dismissed without thought, missed calls, changes in routine, subtle shifts in Samantha's energy, but none of it registered as danger. Love had softened his instincts. Trust had quieted his doubts. At that stage of his life, Ethan believed that betrayal was something that happened to other people. Stories you heard about, not experiences you lived. He believed that loyalty was mutual, that effort was reciprocated, and that silence meant peace rather than deception. That belief carried him confidently into the moment that would dismantle it completely. The trip that changed everything began like any other. Ethan arrived at the airport tired but focused, reviewing notes for a meeting scheduled the next morning. The terminal was crowded, filled with a usual mix of impatience and exhaustion. He checked his phone once, debating whether to call Samantha, but decided against it. There was nothing new to say. He'd call her when he landed. Then came the announcement. His flight had been canceled due to operational issues. No immediate replacement. No clear solution. Just delay and inconvenience. At first, Ethan felt only frustration. He spoke briefly with an airline representative, checked alternatives, and realized there was no realistic way to travel that night. The meeting would have to wait. Standing there with his suitcase, Ethan made a decision that felt insignificant at the time. He would go home. He didn't call Samantha, not because he was hiding anything, but because he wanted to surprise her. He imagined her smile, the casual comfort of being back in his own bed, the relief of rest after a long day. It felt harmless, even thoughtful. The drive home was quiet. Streets were nearly empty. Lights blurred past his windshield, and his mind drifted between irritation and fatigue. When he pulled into the driveway, he noticed lights on inside the house. He assumed Samantha was still awake, maybe watching something or working late. Nothing about the scene felt alarming. Inside, the house felt different. Not wrong, just unfamiliar. The air was heavy with a silence that didn't match the warmth he expected. Ethan moved carefully, not wanting to announce himself too loudly. As he climbed the stairs, he became aware of sounds that didn't belong to an empty house. That was the moment his life began to fracture. He didn't confront anyone. He didn't shout. He didn't even fully process what he was seeing. Instinct took over, not fear, not rage, but withdrawal. He stepped back, his mind racing but his body calm. Without a word, without revealing his presence, Ethan turned around and left the house. That night, he checked into a hotel, sat alone in the dark, and stared at the ceiling as realization settled in slowly, painfully. The canceled flight hadn't inconvenienced him. It had exposed him. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Ethan lay awake, replaying every detail in his mind, questioning his memory, his judgment, his assumptions. He wondered how long it had been happening, how deeply the deception ran, and whether anything he believed about his marriage was real. Yet even as anger threatened to surface, he forced himself to stay calm. Emotion, he knew, would cloud clarity. By morning, exhaustion had replaced shock. Ethan returned home early, careful to appear normal. As he approached the house, he noticed the luxury car pulling away from the driveway. It wasn't familiar. He stood still, watching it disappear down the street, confirmation settling heavily in his chest. Inside, Samantha greeted him with visible surprise. Her expression shifted quickly from shock to forced calm, from confusion to hurried explanation. The bedroom told its own story. Nothing was overtly wrong, yet everything felt disturbed, rearranged, wrong in ways that couldn't be undone. Samantha spoke quickly, offering excuses that tangled over each other. Ethan listened in silence. He didn't accuse her. He didn't raise his voice. He simply observed, absorbing the truth with painful clarity. Silence, he realized, was more powerful than confrontation. A few days later, Samantha asked for a divorce. Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed. Ethan agreed without argument. The paperwork moved quickly. There were no dramatic scenes, no drawn-out disputes. Samantha packed her belongings and left, choosing a different life without looking back. Ethan watched her go with a strange sense of calm. The betrayal hurt, but the certainty helped. He knew exactly where he stood now. In the weeks that followed, consequences began to unfold. Samantha's new life didn't go as planned. Rumors reached Ethan quietly. Their job ended abruptly. The man she had chosen distanced himself. Promises dissolved into silence. Ethan didn't interfere. He didn't watch closely. He focused inward instead. He poured himself into work, finding structure where chaos had once lived. Slowly, routine returned. The pain dulled. Perspective sharpened. He learned that walking away with dignity was not weakness, but strength. Time passed. Months turned into a year, and somewhere along that path, Ethan met Olivia. Time has a quiet way of reshaping pain. In the months following the divorce, Ethan Brooks focused entirely on rebuilding himself, not out of revenge or bitterness, but out of necessity. Work became his anchor. He arrived early, stayed late, and poured his energy into projects that demanded precision and discipline. The structure helped. It gave his days purpose and his nights a sense of exhaustion that allowed sleep to return slowly, 1 hour at a time. Friends noticed the change, not a hardening, but a calmness. Ethan no longer spoke about betrayal or loss. He spoke about goals, plans, and moving forward. It was during this period of quiet rebuilding that Olivia entered his life. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but naturally. They met through a professional circle, introduced casually without expectations. Olivia was thoughtful, composed, and refreshingly honest. There was no performance in her presence. No need for Ethan to pretend or impress. Conversations flowed easily, grounded in reality rather than promises. She asked questions, listened carefully, and respected boundaries, something Ethan had learned to value deeply. Their connection developed slowly, deliberately. Ethan did not rush into trust. He allowed it to grow through consistency and transparency. He shared his past openly, including the pain of his first marriage, not as a confession but as context. Olivia never interrupted, never judged. She didn't offer dramatic reassurance. Instead, she responded with understanding, acknowledging that trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. That patience became the foundation of their bond. Over time, laughter returned to Ethan's life, not forced or cautious, but genuine. Weekends felt lighter. The house no longer echoed with silence. When they eventually decided to marry, it wasn't because of fear of being alone or pressure to start over quickly. It was because peace had replaced uncertainty. Their marriage was quiet, respectful, and rooted in mutual effort. With Olivia, Ethan didn't feel the need to watch closely or doubt constantly. Trust was not assumed, it was earned daily, and freely given in return. For the first time since the night his life changed, Ethan felt whole again. Years later, on an otherwise ordinary afternoon, Ethan experienced a moment he hadn't anticipated. He was driving home after work when he noticed a familiar figure standing alone at a bus stop. At first, he thought it was coincidence, but as he slowed, recognition settled in. It was Samantha. Time had changed her. The confidence she once carried was replaced with fatigue, her posture heavy, her expression distant. She looked smaller somehow, worn down by circumstances Ethan did not fully know and did not need to. Ethan hesitated, then pulled over. Not out of obligation, but out of closure he hadn't realized he already possessed. He called out to her. Samantha turned, surprise flashing across her face before softening into something like regret. She approached slowly, uncertain. Their conversation was quiet, restrained, almost fragile. She spoke first, explaining without being asked about losing her job, about promises that had dissolved, about being left alone when things fell apart. Then came the apology. It was hesitant, emotional, and long overdue. Ethan listened without interruption. He felt no anger rise within him, no desire to correct or accuse. The past no longer demanded explanation. When Samantha asked for forgiveness, Ethan didn't dramatize his response. He told her simply that he wished her well, that life had moved on, and that holding on to resentment would only harm them both. There was kindness in his voice, but also finality. They parted without reconciliation, without bitterness. Ethan returned to his car and drove home to Olivia, to the life he had rebuilt with intention and care. As he walked into his house, he felt a sense of gratitude he hadn't expected. Not for the pain, but for the clarity it had forced upon him. The canceled flight that once felt like a curse had been a turning point, guiding him away from illusion and toward truth. Standing beside Olivia that evening, Ethan understood the lesson fully. Sometimes betrayal is not the end of a story, but the beginning of a better one. And sometimes, the greatest victory is not confrontation or revenge but peace, earned through resilience, dignity, and the courage to move forward. As the sun dipped behind the quiet neighborhood, casting golden light over the streets Ethan once thought were so ordinary, he stood by the window and reflected on everything that had happened. Life had tested him in ways he never imagined. Betrayal, heartbreak, lost day had come quietly, without warning. But they had also forced him to grow, to learn, and to reclaim his own life with clarity and strength. Sometimes, he realized, the moments we dread most are the ones that shape us the deepest. Ethan glanced at Olivia beside him, a steady presence, a reminder that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt when approached with honesty and patience. The house was calm, peaceful, and full of possibility. The past, no longer haunted him, it had become a lesson, a quiet reminder that dignity and resilience are far more powerful than anger or revenge. And as the camera would linger over the neighborhood one last time, showing the gentle glow of lights through windows, the subtle hum of life continuing, one thing was clear. Sometimes, the truths we hope to avoid are the very keys that unlock freedom. The betrayal, the loss, and the unexpected flight cancellation, it all had its purpose, guiding him to a life that was stronger, calmer, and more fulfilling than anything he could have imagined. So if there's one thing to remember from Ethan's story, it's this. Life will challenge you, people will disappoint you, and secrets may be revealed when you least expect them, but moving forward with courage, patience, and integrity can lead to a peace you never thought possible. If you were moved by Ethan's journey, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next shocking story, where hidden truths emerge and lives are transformed in ways you'll never see coming. Remember, sometimes the smallest events reveal the biggest truths, and the courage to act with dignity can change everything. Thank you for watching this video. See you next time.